So my name is Luke Congdon. I'm a director of product management at Nutanix. Nutanix is a hyper-converged infrastructure, which essentially is a converged compute plus storage appliance software company, not a hardware company. I've been in the product industry for about just under 15 years, and I've been in Silicon Valley since the year 2000. So this course is breaking into product management, and it's essentially a culmination of my observations on product as a career choice, how to get there, a couple of tips, a couple of tricks, and a couple of best practices that I thought I would share. So about me. For perspective, I'll give a little bit about my personal background, how I got here, because I have a bit of a unique story for a high-tech product management job, which I'll go into. But the byline here is you build who you are. And I'll tell you why I put that in there. Essentially, people have long careers. You may be starting yours, but my career really starts with, when I think about you build who you are, I do certainly meet people who go directly into high tech. Never did anything, they studied hard, they got into undergrad, maybe they did business school, they went directly to high tech, and that's great. But a lot of people have varied backgrounds. My background was, my mom made custom draperies and she worked out of the home. And my stepfather was an art restoration person with a crazy, sloppy personal studio that was falling over with art supplies. So when you think about you build who you are, the kinds of things you do, and in fact, I worked at a pizza restaurant when I was 15, I worked as a surveyor's assistant, I've done all kinds of things. These kind of things inform your background, inform your perspective, whether you know it or not, when you apply yourself into your role. So I'm kind of old now. I got my undergrad in 1996, which was marketing, which is decidedly not really a technical kind of role. Moved to New York City in 1997. By 2000, I came to Silicon Valley. I've been here since 2003. I went to Santa Clara. I know we have some Santa Clara people in the room today. Finished my MBA then, and only really then did I start getting into technology, having started at Yahoo, which back in 2000 was a really exciting company, and then moving into enterprise product management from there. So sometimes it's really easy to look back and think, well, do I have this perfect technical background profile or not? I know lots of people in technical product management, in all kinds of product management, that have very diverse backgrounds. So this is one perspective on mine. So the reason I decided to do this today, like I mentioned, I met some of you before. I've actually been volunteering for the past several years because it's fun for me and I like sort of helping other people. Volunteering, LinkedIn has this fun sort of career advice hub product that they have. So every couple of weeks I reach out to a few people and see what kind of questions and answers they have. Santa Clara has a graduate business network I volunteer on because that's where I went to grad school. And then people contact me directly and I do a little bit of writing on my own blog as well. And the most popular question, as you've already read here, is how do I get into PM? I've answered all kinds of questions, but everyone asks this question. So I really thought to myself when I was seeing the product school announcements and seeing all the great people who come on in and are looking for the next thing to do, this is the most frequent question. You may or may not have seen this. I remember seeing it when I first came up. As of about 2016, the Wall Street Journal started noticing and reporting on a trend that going into a product management role was becoming more popular than going to Wall Street. Now, Wall Street, of course, still has thousands of people that go there every year, but it's really showing that it's become a very popular role. But at the same time, it's showing that even with an MBA, which I'll describe, you don't have to get an MBA, people struggle to actually make the transition in. So part of what I'll describe is, from my observations, why that's true. And maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. We'll go into a little background. So why breaking in is hard? Breaking in is hard for a couple of different reasons, which I'll line out. But hiring risk is high, therefore companies are very selective. So there's about 5 key reasons. The first is skills. And I'll go into this a little bit more, but the necessary skills to be a great product manager or even just an entry product manager, they're not taught together. People normally go to an undergrad university, they study one thing. And even if they have, a little cross-curriculum kind of thing, they either study all engineering, or they study all philosophy, or they study all marketing kind of thing. So people don't often get what they need together, which is challenging when they try and transition later. Next item in here is craft. There's lots of space for entry-level PM roles, but PM, since the skills aren't taught together, is a craft that people have to hone over years. My first couple of years, I was not the greatest PM, but I just kept going at it, and you get better as you do it more and more. Even public speaking, I used to be terrified at it 15 years ago. I can't even count. It's been hundreds of times I've done public speaking now. Now I'm not bothered at all. But I definitely started off being a little, more than a little nervous about that. As mentioned on the education side of things, what's also missing, formal education has traditionally been missing, as well as mentors are difficult to find. Now, I'm pleased to see that product school and a couple other universities and education programs have started to appear, and that's great. When I started, nothing. There was nothing of this. And frankly, I've only started to see this in the last about 5 years, but it's still a bit niche. So there's no, for example, there's no undergraduate university in product management. Expertise. Hiring risk is high because people need expertise. There is absolutely room for people that are beginning. Just about a year ago, we hired someone on my direct team who's a first-time ever product manager. She's great. So she's doing a great job. There is space, but people, when the risk is high, are looking for people who are good at it. But don't let that deflate you. And finally, I've mentioned risk a couple of times. The risk is in the leverage. If you're really good, your decisions, your curves, your unblocking of engineering can 3x, 4x, maybe even 10x their benefit to the company. But leverage goes both ways. If you're bad, you could 10x the downside. And this is the risk. You want someone who's good, who, even if they're starting, will 1x, 2x, 3x when they're beginning. But if you make the bad choice, you get several x on the downside. Nobody wants that. All right, but it can be done. So as I showed you my timeline, as of a couple years ago, I started this company called Nutanix. I presently manage 2 people. I'm hiring a 3rd right now. It is a deeply technical product. It's a hypervisor product. It's the portion of the product that I own. And it's a $1 billion company. And I've got a team, and we're growing in several different directions. So that's great. 1996, when I started just after undergrad, having a mom who worked in custom draperies and working on art, I had a major in marketing with an undergrad with 0 technical skills. Now, 20 years went by, and this is where everyone's personal story is a little bit different. And you can grow a path there. And sort of the outcome here is your path will be very different than my path. I started I moved to New York City in 1997. I was doing banking. It was very boring. I didn't like it at all. And then because I was interested, I started taking some technical courses in HTML and CSS, which for any engineers in the room is not deep technology. But it was a start. From there, I sort of just got interested. I started making free websites for my friends. I made a couple of wedding websites. I made my own resume website because LinkedIn didn't exist yet. From there, I moved in. I did technical support on a web product. I went to software project management. I got my PMP ages ago. And then your path could go up, down, all around. From there, I broke into a product management role by taking a program manager job and essentially finding a little niche of a product and learning and seeing that it wasn't working for the company, and then completely pitching, writing a PRD that nobody asked me to write, working on a product that nobody asked me to work on, and really carved out this niche without really even having a mentor in that role. So just kept going that. The big jump was going to VMware, and that was really a sink or swim kind of company. Very deep technology, very strong product team, but there was not really a mentoring kind of company at the time. Things could be different now. After that, went to a couple startups. One of the startups blew up, as sometimes happens. That left a nice little crater in my resume, but eventually went over to Nutanix, and it's been great. I mentioned that formal education in this kind of role has only recently started to begin. So this is a fun little graphic that Martin Erickson put together a couple years ago. I've seen it all over the web, and it is a fun, concise way of saying PM is at the intersection of UX, tech, and business. And I really like this. Some people also say that PM is the CEO of their product, which I actually dislike. We can talk about why later. But that being the case, here's what normally happens. What normally happens is people study one thing. So if you're on the UX side of it, you probably went to school for human interaction design or some kind of design. You did a Bachelor of Arts, something like that. If instead you went to school for tech, you did computer science, you did engineering, you might have done information systems. There's a lot of different technical track degrees there. And then maybe you did business administration undergrad, maybe you got an MBA, who knows? But they were all separate. So the challenge is the multidisciplinary person who makes a great PM. Nobody starts out in the middle. Everyone starts out on one side of it, so then what? And this is sort of what my direction is in this talk. So if you're going to meet the bar and get that PM opening role, maybe you started with, this is the same list of those business degrees, or you had the same list of the UI degrees, and there could be more of those. And you could get the sense that you're below the bar for this kind of role. At the same time, since I'm talking about technology product management, you do have a leg up if you want a company like VMware, like a Nutanix, like a Google Compute Engine kind of role. You certainly have an advantage if you're starting from deep technology because they're technology companies. But I didn't do that, and you definitely can't. So the challenge is you can feel, if you're coming from this side, you can feel like you're locked out. So yes, it's easier to start with a technology degree. Less easy is to design your role into, or design your path into PM. But you can do it. And the goal here is you have to go up or go down. These people don't have it easy. In fact, these people can be just as equally feeling that they're stuck as anyone else. So, industry biases. On the one hand, if people look for a PM, nobody hires the worst person they could find, by the way. So the biases are, if I'm hiring for a role, then of course, if I can find someone who's already an expert in what I'm looking for, that's great. It's not the only thing I'm looking for, by the way. Other biases are education. If I see someone, or I talk to someone who went to MIT undergrad and Harvard Business School, they're not having a hard time getting job offers. Now, they still might not be the perfect person, but pedigree can matter sometimes. I definitely didn't have the right pedigree going to a state school, although some of my schools were great, but it wasn't the Stanford, Wharton kind of background. So that was education. Pedigree can also be your companies. Some people only work at the best possible companies, but even breaking in there can be a challenge. And finally, location. This one I really dislike, but I hear it a lot. Are you in Silicon Valley for a tech company? Well, we're all here, so people in this room don't have that problem. But I grew up in rural Connecticut. There was not much high tech in rural Connecticut, and also I wanted to work in the insurance industry in Hartford. If you're coming from somewhere else and you see this recording later, you don't have to be here. It can help. It's an interesting set of biases that go together, that if I could get all of this in one person, that might look like an attractive candidate, but that's not what we're talking about today. I've seen attractive candidates who don't match these things too. So, working PMs, candidate mythology versus real life. So the previous screen is a little bit of the mythology of what would look like a perfect person. So naturally, of course, yeah, I would want someone with a technology background, with some business and UI background as well, with work experience in the domain I'm talking about. Why wouldn't that be perfect? So a perfect mix of all these things. However, this is a unicorn, rarely seen in real life. If this person exists, they're having no problem getting a job. They're probably not interested in this discussion. In reality, what you can find more often is people are an unequal mixture of these things. Maybe this person has more technology than business, some domain expertise, and although you can't see the purple one, that would have been a little UI, UX. So this person could be a really good higher risk. So that's nice. Maybe instead, they are all business with a lot of domain expertise, tiny bit of UI, and no technology background. That actually looks more like me 15 years ago. Now, if you are really good at one, you've got domain expertise, you don't have any of the others, then what? You might be a great hire, but we might need to train you on a couple of things. So, you need cross-training. Maybe there's an opportunity here. And then a bit more challenging is, yes, you've been working, you would like to do a PM kind of role. You're not really deep on any of these, but you've been working somewhere. That's that's a harder role to get up. So one of the things I want to say here, though, is above how perfect of a background you have or how much training you need, motivation means everything. And we can talk afterwards about the examples I have of people with good backgrounds, with poor or insufficient motivation that we didn't go anywhere with. I use the battery analogy down at the bottom intentionally because batteries can be charged, and that's what we're talking about today. So, career framework. We all start somewhere, and maybe your background, like mine, was non-technical 15, 20 years ago. Start at being great at something. So whether you're going to start at the business side, the UX side, or the technology side, start somewhere, be good at that, and then create a roadmap. And we can talk about this, about how to start crossing across these different areas. So if I come from the business side, which was really my side, I took an arrow this way and started learning more about technology. I learned a little bit more about user experience by creating my own websites and working on projects. And really the whole point here is, I know this is a little bit small, but this was something I wrote about a year or two ago to really describe that there's different roles across different segments. And the closer you get to the edges, you can start to overlap and try other things out. This is actually a really good technique, by the way, which we're going to talk about. That way, if I'm in one, start learning some of the others and decide for yourself. If I'm a business person and I really want to think about UX more because I'm not going to go back to school for computer science, that's one way to go. If I'm computer science and I really like user experience, I worked with someone about 12 years ago. She trained herself in dynamic HTML and Ajax, that's what it was called at the time. It's not called that anymore. And now she's a UX engineer over, and not exactly a PM, but she crossed roles, and now she works at Apple. So it's essentially move and create your own roadmap for your career. And then finally, find your breakthrough opportunities. And I'll talk about a little bit how to do that, because it's easier to say than it is to do. So, finding opportunity. This is intentionally listed left or right from easier to harder. And the first one is, at least in my experience, has been if you're starting from one area and you're not already that perfect candidate that did everything, scratch your own itch. If you are a business person and you want to make websites, go do it. I'll tell you what, in my career, I finished my undergrad when the World Wide Web, before it was even called the internet, was about 1 year old. It had almost nothing on it and it was useless. I can go into stories about that. But over time, I just started taking classes and learning how to do stuff. And you keep building from there. That was what I did. And therefore I started making websites for friends. Scratching your own itch could be writing a PhD. It could be doing a market analysis. Nobody needs to pay you to do that. You can just do that in your own spare time. In fact, that could be a way of building up some assets to say, I'm so dedicated to this, I'm doing some things and learning, and you can even find a mentor. Slightly harder, but I think still very much on the easy side is where do you work now? Most people have a job here, right? Some people maybe not. But if you do have a job, the easiest thing to do, I advocate this all the time, is work at your current company. If you're a software engineer at your current company, your PM team always needs help. I could hire 3 more people if I had the recs to hire 3 more people. I have 1, I'm hiring somewhere else. But talk to the PM team, find out what they need, tell them you'll volunteer, make up your 10% time. If you can't get 10% time you carve out, add 10% time. And I know people have families and different things they have to do, but find a space of time and just go volunteer your time. That means you get to know the PM team where you work, you get to find out what they need, maybe you can help them out, maybe you can work up some requirements for them, maybe they'll actually get used. There's a real opportunity to grow internally because people always need help. The next one's networking. I'm going to talk a little bit about networking at the end, and normally I wouldn't talk about that in terms of learning how to be a PM. I just see it done badly so often that I really want to talk about this one. Add training. This goes back to that circular diagram. If you're starting from somewhere, go to the left, go to the right, or just learn more about the area you're in. Cross-training, I'm not saying is easy. If I was to go back for computer science, that would be pretty hard for me. I'm actually not a computer scientist by trade at all. But some things are easy. Taking a Coursera class is easy. Coming to product school is easy. Just working internally with your team is easy. Going back for an MBA is not easy. Going back for a second degree is not easy. But it might be a choice you can make, in which case your roadmap could be a multi-year roadmap. That's okay. Bypass recruiting. I put this one up here, and I want to give you a caveat. Use your networking to meet hiring managers, to meet people who can introduce you to people at their companies, to bypass the filter of recruiting. This is a useful technique, but not if you haven't done any of your background work. If you know people and you can get an introduction, but you haven't done the background work to expand your profile, to learn stuff, to get some hands-on experience. I might get an introduction to Larry Page, but if I'm 1 year out of school and I've only done one thing, he's going to throw it in the trash. So going directly here, and it's over here on the harder side intentionally, don't rush to that because you want to shortcut the process. Finally, take a leap. Take a leap says, I've been working on this, I've been growing my background, I've been working on road mapping where my weak spots are. Try another company. Try a company that will give you the opportunity. This one's on the difficult side because also if I haven't done my background and I haven't been expanding my profile of skills, if I'm a software engineer and I go to another company, they're going to say, I could really use a software engineer. I'm glad you came. But they're not going to give you a product job. If I've been filling in the background and I say, yeah, I came from 5 years of software engineering, but in the last year I've been doing UX projects, I've been volunteering for my PM team, I've had an associate PM job for half a year as a part-time role. They'll go, maybe we could take a chance on you. That's where switching helps you out. But if you switch companies in your same job role, you're starting over from the advantage point of growing within a company. So don't set yourself back simply by getting restless. And then finally, I put this one up for fun. You might get lucky, but luck is not a strategy. If you get lucky, 2 thumbs up. I would work on all this stuff and hope luck meets you on the road. All right. Describing types of PMs could be a whole class in and of itself. I'm going to put this up here just as a quick introduction to say, broadly speaking, there's internal and external facing PMs. Some companies merge them together and do not differentiate. An external facing PM traditionally is your traditional kind of product manager. You're working with the field, and if by field I mean your salespeople, your sales engineers, you're working directly with your customers, you're setting the vision of the product, you're probably writing requirements, you're determining objectives and measuring your metrics. That's great. If you're an internal facing PM, you're still a PM, but it's a slightly different role. Now some people do or do not call it a product owner. Product owner is really an agile framework kind of definition. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. An internal facing PM though might not really talk to customers, or your customers might be other people internal to the company. There are plenty of companies that build tools, and those tools have requirements, and nobody except other people inside the company might use those tools. That's still a product job. I would still take that. If I was trying to get in and I got this kind of offer, I would still take that. Just be aware that they are slightly different, and some companies, they might put all those things together. This is not a third type. It's just a warning. You can be a remote PM, but if I'm taking that first PM job, be very careful about taking a remote PM job. I've worked at a lot of companies where people have been a PM outside of headquarters. Like for example, when I was at VMware, we had people in Seattle. They were very good at what they did, but when you're not at headquarters, you're not next to your engineers, you're not near your management chain, it's very hard to be visible. It's very hard, and it can be harder, depending on who you are, to be impactful. If this is the first role you get, you could say yes. But if you're remote and there's no other PMs around you, it could be very difficult to grow and learn and get mentored by other people. So I just say be very careful here. Visibility will rely on you. I've seen even senior people give up after a year and go to a different local company because their managers don't recognize their work. At least that's what they feel. They feel they're not getting considered for promotion because PM is a very in-person kind of role. The big question, I hear this one all the time too. Do I need an MBA? And a bit facetiously, I wrote down here, I don't know. Do you? For full disclosure, I got an MBA in 2003. I had that up there earlier. Whether you want to do this or not, it is not required, but it could be helpful. It's a big investment of money. It's a big investment of time. If you've been working for over 10, 15 years, you might do an executive MBA. You might be able to do that in about a year and a half versus a 3-year part-time program. But if I'm coming from a vertical and I've been working maybe 5 years only in computer science and I've been a software engineer, this might be a way to say, fill in that whole segment of business background in one fell swoop. So it is sort of a shortcut method, an expensive shortcut that could still take you 2 full years to fill in that business segment if you're coming from one of the others. I'm not advocating you spend a ton of money on this. They are expensive, and you need to think about that. But you could also say, do I need a computer science degree if I came from a different area? Well, do I want to code? If the answer is I want to code, then yeah, maybe you do. If I want to be a PM, you don't necessarily need it, just like you don't necessarily need an MBA. But it is a way to fill in skills. So this one is a chart that I'm going to go through a little bit slowly. And I wrote legacy companies versus startups. And essentially, legacy companies I describe as training companies because they're big enough to give you people to work with. They're big enough to give you opportunities which are entry level with people that can help mentor you, grow you, etc. Versus startups, which some people, I don't remember who came up with this quote, said, startup is building the airplane while falling off a cliff.
Reid Hoffman.
What's that?
Reid Hoffman.
Oh, Reid said that, yeah. It's a fun description. I like it. That being the case, if you're falling out of the sky and you're trying to build a company, even if you do get that role, I'll describe why it is only taken under advisement. So, startup PM opportunities. At a big company, they might actually exist. At a startup that only has 5 people, or 10 people, or 30 people, they might not have PM roles. Meanwhile, if I'm at a really small startup, the lead product manager is your founder. Now that founder might have the CEO role, they might have the CTO role, but when they're the person that gave this baby an idea and got people together to work on it and got some funding, they lead the product, not you. You might have a product owner or product manager role. Just be careful. I'll go into that a little bit. Ability to learn. At a big company, yeah, absolutely. And it's because you have other product managers there. You have people with 2, 5, 10 more years experience. People there to review your specs, review your ideas, challenge you in your ideas so that you form them a little bit tighter. At a startup, you can definitely grow. You can definitely learn. But if you're the only PM there and your founder PM is off trying to get more money, is off trying to figure out what the next big initiative is, planning the trade show, you might not get guidance. You might grow a lot, you might learn fast, but you might not grow as a PM or not to the level that you wished you did. Just be careful there. Existing PM team to learn from. At a large company, yes. At a startup, depends on growth series. If you're seed, you might be the only person. If you're Series A, you might be 1 or 2 people. If you're Series B, you still might be 1 or 2 people. If you're Series E and you took on your $25 or $50 million round or $100 million round, Series E, could be a company of 100, 200 people. That's probably fine. I wouldn't really call that a startup. I would just call it a pre-IPO kind of company. Career growth. I say slower for a large company, but that's not a bad thing. It takes time. Like I said, PM is a craft. It takes time to get good. It's sort of that 10,000 hours comparison that somebody, I'm missing his name, came up with years ago. But whether it's 10,000 hours, whether it's 500 hours, how many hours do you need to get good? You need to work at it. It's like playing the piano. It's gonna take weeks and months and years to get good. So slow is not a problem. Take that first role, work for a year, work for 2 years, work for 3 years, become a senior PM. If you want to make that a career track and keep going, that's great. Personally, I'm not concerned that it would take me 3 years to feel like I was really good, as long as I felt like I was contributing. At a startup, it's unpredictable. Startup could be out of business in 6 months. I had that experience once. That was fun. It's also unpredictable because if you have a small team and you're trying to get your MVP out to market, you're trying to find a market, people who actually hand you $1 for your work, they're not really worrying about growing you. They're worrying about surviving. Expertise required. Large company depends on role. I say that because you could be a first-time PM, you could be a senior PM, you could be a group PM, a product line manager, you could be a director, which is a different level entirely from how do I break in. But the level of experience that you need depends on the role they're hiring you for. Startups, the answer is often yes. And it's because they need someone to come in and be effective today. First day, without much guidance. Here's the vision, here's the people we're talking to. We're gonna pitch these people tomorrow. Here's the deck, get ready by tomorrow morning. They need someone who can be effective as fast as possible. It's probably not a training organization. And then experience required, very similar. Experience required depends on the role. If you want a senior PM job and you've never done it before, you're not gonna get that job. But you could get an entry-level PM job. And then again, often yes at a startup, because if they hire you with no experience and if you want the entry-level role and you're over here, be careful you're not the janitor. And I'm not trying to be pejorative there, but if you get that first level role and the senior team are really the people calling all the shots, and of course you'll always work with the senior team. If you get the role because you really want it, but you have no authority to do what a product manager does, you're just going to clean up Jira, you're just going to schedule meetings. Don't be the janitor. There are plenty of great entry-level ways to get into a good product role. Just be careful there. So, essentially, if you're really starting, I do actually advocate large companies. If you're a startup kind of person, go to a large company for 2 years. Go for 3 years. Learn some background, and then decide, is this for me? You can grow, you can accelerate with a lot of risk. And I say a lot of risk because these companies blow up all the time. It's wonderful if you can join LinkedIn when it was 1 year old, but that's less than 1% of all startups out there. Impostor syndrome. I hear about this a lot too, and I certainly know a lot of people who have felt this way. And since we're talking about technology product jobs, a lot of people will say, well, but I'm not an engineer. Am I hosed? And my feedback is no, but it doesn't mean you don't necessarily have the need to cross-train yourself or do some other stuff. So I would say if you get that role and you're not an engineer, you got the role. Keep learning, keep getting better, add value to your team. Engineering teams I work with all the time, they just want you to make their lives better. Get the feedback from the customer. Write good stories, write good requirements. If they give you feedback, go work on them. Make their lives better and they will like you. I don't have an MBA. You know what? I know a ton of very senior, super professional, non-MBA product managers. Not an issue. If it helps you with training and you want that, great. If you think you want to get on the management track one day, well, maybe it's a bit more useful, but still not necessary. I know a guy who was a VP at a very successful 7-year-old startup. He never did an MBA, and he didn't even have a technology background. He was a mathematics major. Very smart. People will figure out that I don't know enough. So what? If you don't know enough, keep learning. Learn more. If you go to your engineering team, they're like, I need customer feedback for this, and you don't have it, tell them you'll get it. Finding customers is not hard. You may think it's hard. Talk to your salespeople, talk to your SEs, talk to your funnel, go talk to your salespeople and people that said no to your product and go ask them why. It's not hard to find customers. If you're nervous about that, that's a different issue. Finding them, not that hard. So yeah, keep unblocking your teams. Another thought here, all that glitters. The reference here is all that glitters is not gold. Even if you get that role, it's a challenging position. I love it. At the same time, sometimes I'm frustrated by it. There are 100 things on here and another 100 things I didn't even list. Of course, you have your customers, you have your product, marketing, engineering, execution, release management, navigating org structure. These things are all interconnected, and they're all going to pull on you at the same time with different levels. You might be doing taking care of bugs really well with engineering while prioritizing customers. The CEO comes in and says, sales has a problem today. This is your problem today until it's fixed. Meanwhile, engineering hasn't stopped. Execution still has a deadline next Monday, It's a challenging role. It's also exciting. This is just the landscape. If that excites you, awesome. Maybe this is for you. If this stresses you out, think about it. Think about it. Okay, so what do I do next? How do I translate all this? First, I would say decide what vertical you are. We didn't really talk about this yet. There are thousands upon thousands of companies, even within the technology sector. Do I want to work for a drone company? Do I want to work for a search company? Do I want to work for an infrastructure company? Do I want to make phone apps? There's all kinds of jobs out there. I say this because so many times over the years, people come to me and say, hey, Luke, can you help me find a job? And I say, I don't know. What do you want? Don't know. I'll do anything. I can't help you with anything. I know people in enterprise infrastructure. My wife knows somebody that does something else. But if you say anything, I can't help you. Now, if you say, I want a drone company, and I'm not in the industry, I'm like, well, my friend Amit works for a drone company. Maybe I could introduce you. But if I don't know what you want, I can't help you. Now, doesn't mean you have to decide once and forevermore. If you want to work on drones for a while and then move over to autonomous vehicles, if you can make that shift, that's fine. Roadmap yourself. Back to that circular diagram, figure out where your weak points are, fill them in. Filling them in could be take some short classes. It could be take a 2-year degree cycle. It could be a 5-year transition program. If you're in a rush to get it done, you could end up frustrated. Find and make your opportunities. I've got a slide on this coming up. This is similar to the slide where I said network, scratch your own itch, about a few slides back. And finally, just get started. You're here, that's a great start. You're in Silicon Valley, that's a great start. There's definitely a lot of opportunity here. It may feel difficult to break in sometimes, but if I was in a small city in the middle of America that had no nearby technology, it's not impossible. Do I want that remote PM job? Could be risky. You're in a great area. It's a great time. There's tons of companies. Even in recessions, there's still tons of companies. But it will take some time. And then finally, keep learning. Keep learning is part of that cross-training. Even after you get the job, I'm always reading. Every day I read for an hour before I even take a shower. I have tons of feeds. There are tons and tons of industry documents. I still read RSS feeds because it's a great way to get information. There's all kinds of stuff. If I run into a particular feature on my product at work and I'm not familiar with that one, well, that night I'm reading about that one. Depends how on it you want to be. Networking tips. I put this in here only because I see people do it so badly. And hopefully you don't take this the wrong way and you just think about it in terms of how can I be more effective? So let me start with LinkedIn. For the record, I love LinkedIn. It is one of the best tools I've seen in the last 15 years. However, what I see all the time is people send me a connect request. I don't know them. I don't know their business. I don't know their background. They didn't go to my school. We have no information. And it has no note in it. It has no reason for me to know them. So they send me so I'm okay. So what if I say yes? Maybe they are a product manager. Maybe they're in my industry. I say yes. And that's the end of it. Did they think I was going to follow up with them? I'm kind of busy. I'm not a mean guy, but if I just get a blind request, even if I say yes or say no, very often it just ends there. I don't know what they want. It's frankly, it's a worthless 2-click transaction. They clicked, I clicked, I went on with my job, or I went home for dinner. I am very happy to meet people. Like I said, I worked on the advice hub. I'm happy to talk to people. I've met some of the folks in the room. They can raise their hand if they want to. It's entirely up to them. I've met before because we networked and because we had the opportunity to connect. So it does happen. I do it all the time, but not when someone just clicks. I actually mentioned this one already. People come to me and say, hey, do you have a job? Sometimes I will connect people, and I'm actually happy to do that. I just interviewed a person this week who connected to me with a note, with a reason to know her through LinkedIn. I didn't know her at all. I passed her resume to the guy I sit next to. He said, yeah, I will talk to her. She came in this week and interviewed. I don't know if she's getting the job or not, but it does happen. But if I don't know you, I'm not going to go do all the searching for you. I'll do the searching for my nephew. So tell me what you want in detail, and I might help you. or I might not. If you come to me and say, you know what, I really want to work at a cosmetics company because I just love how cosmetics work. I know nothing about the industry, literally nothing. I can't help you. If you say I want to work in technology and my company has a fit, maybe I can broker an introduction. Or maybe I have a friend I can broker an introduction. But if I don't know what you want, I can't do anything. Ask me for help and then disappear. This one happens a lot too, and I am happy to help people. But you'd be surprised the number of times I make a connection for someone and they don't even say thank you. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I'm not mortally offended, but if they ask me for help twice, I might think to myself, I don't know, this person's a taker. Create a relationship. We don't have to be best friends, but if you want to network and you want to create a relationship that you might come back to in a year, in 5 years, get to know me, or get to know whoever you're talking to. So, one great piece of advice, no matter how you connect with a purpose, and if you need a request, you have an ask, make it specific. Maybe I can connect you, maybe I can't. If I can, and the request is specific, it could be something I do. Close the loop, add value to the relationship. Maybe you can help me, maybe you can't. You don't have to help me, but keep that relationship going. It's much more productive than some of the other methods that are in the red X's here. Essential reads. I'm a big fan of Ben Horowitz. I never met the gentleman, but I love good PM, bad PM, and good group PM, dead group PM. He wrote these, and I think he wrote it with someone else back when he was at Netscape. They're pretty old, and they are still spot on. They are amazing reads. Now, just to poke fun at a moment, I think he was the person that said you're the CEO of your product. The reason I don't like CEO of the product is because you're not the CEO. The CEO can hire people, they can fire people. If you don't like who you're working with, they're doing a bad job, CEO can fire them. You can't do that. Sometimes that's frustrating. You may need to work with people that are not pulling their weight. It happens. Everything else is spot on. He wrote a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things I've read multiple times. Amazing book. Here's a small list of hundreds of great resources as well. VC newsletters. This one's actually pretty interesting. Sign up on the different major VC websites and get on their newsletters. They send interesting analysis all the time. Over at A16Z, there's a, I'm missing his name. There's a British gentleman. He writes his own newsletter. There's podcasts. There's tons of great content out there. This is just the surface level here. And finally, thank you. I'm sure there's questions. Be happy to take questions. Yeah.
So going back to the last side, how about humble bugging? If you're not getting the help, you're trying to reach a person,
yeah,
and you're desperate about the help. What should be your strategy to do a humble bugging, like a periodic bugging, so that you get something?
By all means, follow up once. Okay. But if they're continuing to not get back to you, once seems like enough. Now, if they respond to you the first time, they're like, "Oh, let me get that to you in a week," and they didn't get back to you, then of course remind them. Just do it in a way that's respectful of their time. I don't mind getting asked twice for things. Sometimes I'm a pretty busy guy. But if it's gone like 2 and especially 3 times without response, move on. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation, really insightful. One question in regards to courses or trainings that we can take on the business side. Let's say we come from technology or UI UX. Something more precise with regards to trainings on the business side? Something that we can get online or, yeah.
Well, since my undergrad was essentially a business degree, and then I did an MBA. I never specifically did additional business training per se.
Okay.
And there are a lot of courses out there. Some are free. LinkedIn has, I think they bought lynda.com, is LinkedIn Learning now. There's Coursera, there's Udemy, etc. It depends what thing interests you. I would just say there's a ton of it out there. Think for yourself. If it's possible to think clearly about where you want to be in 2 years, what do you need to learn? So if you're a software engineer, for example, and you think, well, I want to do product, Therefore, maybe I should take a strategy class. Maybe I should take a wireframing class. Maybe I should take a how to evaluate competitors kind of class. Could be useful. Yes.
Please bear with me, it's a longish question. So it feels like it's a chicken and egg problem. When I look at openings for product manager roles, they're all almost, there's always a must-have experience in product management.
Yeah.
And even if I have some outside experiences that I'm just working on to scratch my edge, how effective is it in actually catching someone's attention? Because there is a shift. There's a lot more MBAs getting into product management now versus several years ago. So even for entry-level jobs, we are competing with the same pool. So how would you stand out? I mean, does it even matter that we have those things in the resume? Because the job requirements specifically ask for X number of years experience.
Yeah. I'll say two things about that. When it comes to job descriptions, I've written a lot of them. I've applied to a lot of them. People, when they create a job description, they write down their wish list. MBA required, 4 years required. They wireframed and used a text editor to code a 4,000 line website by hand. People ask for their wish list, and it looks like it's required because it's in the job spec, right? It's not always required. What I would say is apply anyway. And the reality of job posting sites is you'll mostly not hear back. So it's very frustrating, which is why I always say work with the company you're at and just try and get cross-functional. Do whatever it takes to get cross-functional and start looking like you have those skills. Every product team I've ever worked with needs help. They're willing to take help if you've got the time, especially if you are working. If you're not working, it's sort of a different question. But if you are working, help out. Help out, add it to your resume. Because there's a big difference of a first-time PM role or an associate PM or just a flat level PM versus a product line manager. If you're looking at the more senior roles, you're definitely going to look like you don't really fit there, and that's probably true. One thing that's also true is a lot of companies don't always post the jobs they need, partially because the recs aren't approved yet, they're not in the budget yet. Maybe they're waiting for interns, who knows? Internship is one way to do it, but if you're working full-time, I wouldn't really take a part-time internship. It's too risky. People pay rent around here, they've got families. Unless you have the kind of background where someone in your family can hold the fort down for you, maybe you could try that. Normally I wouldn't say do that.
What about PMP and Scrum certifications? You feel like they're still useful these days, or you should really do something else with your time?
PMP and Scrum. So it depends what you want to do. Every product job, especially if you're shipping code, if it's a technical product, you will definitely have release management, or you'll have someone in a Scrum role, or you'll have a waterfall method. You're going to take code and ship it somehow. There's nothing wrong with PMP or Scrum. But if you double down in those things, they might say, well, looks like he wants to be a Scrum Master or a release management person. So certainly add it in to understand how the software gets shipped, get through phase gates, get approved, quality bars, functionality bars. It's not bad. I actually did a PMP years ago, like 12, 13 years ago. And after I did that for a while, I transitioned into PM. I actually erased PMP from my resume because I kept getting project manager job things in my email. So I actually took it off. But at the time, it was boosting my resume and it helped me transition. So just be careful where you double down. It's kind of like when people are just getting out of undergraduate and they take that first job. Some people get desperate to find that first job and they say, oh, I'll do anything, I need to get started, I'll take this marketing job. You gotta be careful. You might be working marketing for another 15 years. So think about what you want. If you're gonna take something for a while, create the path. See where you wanna go so you don't get stuck in just being a Scrum Master. Yes?
So if let's say someone were to go into project management and you do have past experience, or maybe you come from a technical background, how important is domain knowledge when you're applying for this kind of position? Because if you're a project manager or a product manager, you obviously have to plan out the milestones for your product, right? So you have to have some sort of domain knowledge. So what if you're coming from a different sort of industry and then coming into a new company that is in a different industry?
So I do see this pretty frequently. So people that come in to interview for me or for my peers, and I'm on the interview panel, it's pretty common people come from different companies, and sometimes companies that don't do the same thing. That's not really a problem for me. But what I'm looking for, if you don't have domain experience, is I'm looking for transferable skills. So you might not do that same thing, but if you're coming from, let's say, a security background and now you want to do data center software, well, there's security features. Do you want that? That's a pretty strong fit, because that does domain. But let's say you're doing security and now you want to do I don't know, electronic coffee makers or something like that. That can still be a good job. What I'm going to want to know is what kind of skills did you learn there that can work here. I might not care about security at that point, but I want to know, did you talk to customers? Did you develop requirements? How did you work with engineering? Are you able to hold your own with engineering and really draw a line when they push you and try and get you to take off a feature because it's easier for them? Can you work with the business? Do you understand how the business runs? And that's sort of where, for example, you're coming from a technical role, you could transition directly to PM role. But that does happen. You don't have to always learn the other things. But it could limit you if you can't describe how the business works. One of the things, I'm actually working on a post for my site that might come out next month sometime. There's something I see all the time. It actually happened this week. I see it all the time. It drives me crazy. People come to interview, and I ask them, I always start off with a really easy question. How you doing? What do you know about my company? You would be amazed at how many people cannot tell you what you do. You can't interview me. You can't tell me what my company does. I say, thank you, thanks for coming. When we finish up the conversation, then I do this. If you're in a product role is an amazing job because of that bubble diagram. There's a ton of things. How does the product work? How does the business work? How are you going to sell? How are you going to position? How are you going to market? How are you going to work with engineering? How are you going to line stuff up? How are you going to create a strategy? If you can't research the company website, I don't have a product manager job for you. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
Okay.